In early 1862, General McClellan was disembarking his forces from Fort Monroe, Virginia, to go up the Virginia Peninsula and eventually try to capture Richmond. He needed reinforcements that he thought would come from McDowell, who was north of Chancellorsville with 30,000 men. Lee gives the orders to Major General Thomas Jonathan Jackson to tie down Union forces so he couldn't help McClellan. Banks starts to move toward Jackson, and Jackson has no choice but to withdraw, faced with vastly superior numbers. Banks, expecting Jackson to be contained, moved away from the Shenandoah Valley and leaves a small force at a town called Kernstown. Jackson's cavalry commander, Colonel Ashby, reports a force of 3,000 Federal troops, while in actuality there is 8,500. Garnett and Funkleton took a ridge to the west and set up behind a brick wall. They fought hard, but forces kept coming and coming. Garnett, not receiving orders, decided to retreat. This left Funkleton's right flank exposed, so he had to retreat also. Jackson was furious and relieved Garnett. The battle at Kernstown scared the Federals, and Banks returned all his forces to the Shenandoah Valley. Jackson went south to meet up with General Ewell for more troops, while at the whole time being trailed by Banks. The pathfinder of the West himself, Union General John C. Fremont, was stationed to the west of Shenandoah Valley in the Alleghenies. He sent General Robert Milroy southeast to the town called McDowell. Jackson took advantage of the small detachment and went to McDowell. The Union, despite having less forces, attacked first. The Union had the sun on their backs and were hidden by the shadows of the surrounding trees, while the Confederates were on top of the hills silhouetted by the sky, making them easy targets. The 12th Georgia held the Union forces back from gaining the crest on the ridge to the far Union right. Out of the 540 men they had, 40 had been killed and 140 were wounded. Not being able to take the hill, Milroy called for a retreat, and they fled to Monterey. Banks once again thinks Jackson is contained and sends Shields to McDowell so they could support McClellan. Jackson and Ewell go north and attack keenly at Fort Royal and beat him into submission. Jackson then pursued Banks until he fled north of the Potomac. While Jackson is far north, Shields, who is east, and Fremont, who is west, see the opportunity to trap Jackson and rush to trap him, but Jackson's foot cavalry is simply too fast for capture. Jackson stops at a place called Port Republic, where he will engage in the battles of Cross Keys and Port Republic, battles that make the climax of the campaign and a military masterpiece. Jackson had Fremont on one side of the Shenandoah River and Shields on the other. He sent Ewell to attack Fremont first in the Battle of Cross Keys, not to beat him, but to delay him so he can take them on one at a time rather than both at the same time. Fremont decides to attack the Confederate right, but Ewell and Trimble advanced so the Union couldn't get around. After heavy casualties, Fremont retreats to Castletown. Ewell left to help Jackson and burn the only bridge to Port Republic, stopping Fremont from reinforcing Shields. Jackson attacked Tyler's detachment in the Luray Valley, southeast of the Shenandoah River. Tyler had his right anchored in the Shenandoah River and his left on Coaling Hill, as well as artillery on top of the Coaling. Jackson sent Winder to attack first, but since they were exposed, outnumbered, and being rained on by the artillery atop the Coaling, they looked for shelter. Jackson sent help to Winder, while the rest went to attack the artillery on the Coaling. Winder tried to attack again, but he failed, so he retreated. Then Ewell arrived to attack the Federals' left flank. Taylor captured the artillery, and they eventually drove off the enemy. After the battle at Port Republic, Jackson went to Richmond to support Lee, while the Federal troops escaped north.